I voluntarily walked away, and I still struggle with saying walked or I was a reporter,
right?
Because I haven't let go of that. And that's in flux. Like, I'm still very unsure about my path forward and what storytelling and journalism looks like. But I don't think I realized like how much I wasn't just Sarah Blake. I was Sarah Blake, the reporter.
Today's episode sponsor is Aditon, creators of Aditon Operations Kit, the military's go-to software for personnel and equipment accountability. AOK goes where you do, any network, anytime, any place. I got to know Aditon's co-founders, James and JJ, several years ago. They are former Army NCOs who have years of experience in the tech industry. They understand that most military jobs aren't performed behind a computer desk. Personnel and operations are distributed, but accountability of property is paramount to making mission. That's where Logi, AOK's equipment management software, comes into play. Formerly known as 92X, Logi is a next generation of equipment management for the military. Logi offers unrivaled features for military teams on the go. Ingest and digitize your primary and sub-hand receipts. Generate and share sub-hand receipts and DA forms with your team in just a few clicks. Capture photos, tags, and notes across your team to build context on the state of equipment. Get easy on-the-go access to critical property records. Logi is custom built for the modern military professional. It gives you your valuable time back so you can get back to the mission at hand at home or in the field. Whether you're doing monthly inventories or preparing for deployment, Logi is your pocket property book, giving you real-time visibility into equipment status and mission readiness. Logi is currently in use across the U.S. Army Special Forces, and it's expanding. For a limited time, listeners of the From the Green Notebook podcast can try out Logi for free. Visit aditonppc.com/FTGN-Logi to get started. That's aditonppc.com/FTGN-LOGE. How do I know what I think until I see what I say?
The Green Notebook, carried by military leaders around the world. Within those pages are sweat, tears, triumphs, and the hard-won lessons of life. Lessons worth sharing. Each week, the team dives into the notebooks of military leaders, business professionals, authors, athletes and coaches, and entertainers to share lessons and help you lead with the best version of yourself.
Welcome to another episode of From the Green Notebook. I'm your host, Joe Byerly, and today we're diving into the Green Notebook of Sarah Blake Morgan, an award-winning journalist turned Army officer and the creator of The Forgotten, a podcast that gives voice to the stories headlines have left behind. What makes this episode a little different is that we recorded it while driving around in my truck for an hour. Just two friends talking candidly about identity, transitions, and the messy process of figuring out what comes next. Sarah's journey is anything but traditional. She went from chasing hurricanes and covering politics as a national correspondent to lacing up her boots and starting over at Army Basic Training in her 30s. But the most compelling part of her story isn't the resume. It's her willingness to talk about ego, vulnerability, and letting go of the life she thought she wanted. As someone who's also wrestled with big life changes, I have found this conversation incredibly moving. We explore what it means to kill an old identity, how to rediscover your purpose through action, and why sometimes you just have to wander into the woods and trust that you'll figure it out along the way. So grab your green notebooks and please welcome to the show, Sarah Blake Morgan.
Hello, Joe.
Hello, Sarah. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is the first time we're doing this. We are actually driving in my truck. We're trying this special edition of the podcast where we just drive around and talk. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we'll give it a go.
Hey, we're just going to try it. Throw things against the wall and see if they work.
Yeah, or slam the car into a ditch and see.
Either way, it'll make a story, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I was thinking about this earlier. We've probably been friends now for 7 months?
Sure.
Something like
Who's
that.
counting?
Who's counting, yeah. And we've been talking about doing this for a while, and I think, why not now while we're driving somewhere?
Yeah.
So the first question I have for you, and the reason why, for our listeners, the reason why we want to do this episode is that Sarah had this midlife career change.
Crisis. Career
change, whatever. I'll be nice. I'll say career change. And I wanted you to talk about it. So that's where we'll begin. Talk about your first life, like how you got there, what you did.
Yeah, there's definitely a before and after for me because they are two different life's worlds. I'm a different person. So I grew up and always wanted to be a journalist. That was always the goal for me. I always joke that when I was a kid, I felt like Tom Brokaw was a member of my family because he was always on the television, and that's the life I wanted to live. So I went to school for journalism. I graduated and sent out 75 DVDs across the country to TV stations all over the place.
How old were you at the time?
I was 21.
Okay.
Just graduated. And it was right before the time where you could just email a YouTube link.
Right.
So I actually made those DVDs of my news resume tape and sent it to any small to medium television station in the country that was hiring. Lubbock, Texas called. I had to look it up on the map. I vaguely knew of Texas Tech, the Red Raiders, but definitely had never been there. I grew up in Tampa, Florida. They flew me out there a few days after Christmas in 2011, and I accepted the job. That was my dream job. I actually had a Facebook memory recently that said, I finally get to say I am a TV news reporter. And I started, I think my first day on the job was my first day on the news. So there really wasn't much of a learning curve.
Yeah.
You're just thrown into it.
Yeah, I love that memory because I think back to when I finally commissioned and I was finally an officer in the United States Army after 4+ years, because I started thinking about doing this as a junior, senior in college or in high school. And so, yeah, you get this thing of like, I'm finally starting this journey of this dream that I've had. And then like, so then like what happens for you?
Yeah, so TV news, you can go to school wherever. I don't know if there will be any aspiring journalists listening to this, but there are the big, prestigious J schools out there, Arizona, Chapel Hill, Mizzou, but it's something that like you have to learn on the job. You have to be on that deadline, given your story at 9 a.m. in the news meeting, and having the threat in your head that this has to make it on TV at 4 o'clock, at 5 o'clock, at 6 o'clock. I have different live hits, and I've got to make my slot. So it's very much the first 6 months on the job. I remember was chaotic.
Yeah.
I'm doing my makeup in the rear view mirror of the car, jumping out of the car, getting on TV, editing in between. But it's exactly what I wanted. It's local news, so it's hard news, homicides, fires. I did a lot of storm chasing out there, which I loved. But yeah, it was the dream.
Was there any time in there where you're like, why am I doing this? And I'm asking because there were several times early on in my career where I was like, did I make the right choice? And it wasn't like, it would never be anything that would last for more than maybe a few months at best, if like I was in a job or working for somebody I didn't like. But for the most part, I was pretty happy, but I would question, every now and then did I make the right choice? Or like, do I need to go do something else? Was that ever anything in those first...
At that point, absolutely not.
No.
All I saw was tunnel vision. I want to be a TV news reporter. That did come eventually, but that took a good 5, 6, 7 years. It came, and it came swiftly, but early on, no.
So let's talk about that. Like, I'm really interested in that feeling. When did it start? What did it feel like? when you felt this like change of, I think I need to do something different?
So I can't identify one specific moment where I had this aha, like, is this exactly what I thought it was going to be? It was over time. So I started off at the NBC affiliate in Lubbock, Texas. Then in TV news, you kind of move up the ranks. You try to move to bigger markets. That was market 143. New York City's number 1, LA's 2. That's how it works. I moved from 143 to market 24, which is Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was on the CBS affiliate there. From there, I went to the Associated Press, and I was always on the road, which is what I always wanted to do.
Right.
The long-term goal for me since day one was I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. I wanted to be a war correspondent. I wanted to live out of a suitcase. And the very cliche, I don't necessarily stand by it now, but the cliche thing that I would always say, I want to be a voice for the voiceless.
Right.
I want to go to those austere locations and be the one that spotlights a story that hasn't been told. So when I went to the AP, that was the goal. It's one of the largest news organizations on the planet. So I can start out as, a national reporter being sent out the door with, something big happens. If I saw an alert, I knew I was getting a call within a couple minutes. Hey, you need to be on a plane to this. And I thought I could start there. Eventually I would go abroad. But then I would say COVID happened. My travel slowed down a little bit, but it just kind of started to get mundane, and I could do my job in my sleep. I also recognized that my empathy, which was always a strength of mine, like the best compliment I can get as a journalist when I'm telling a story is, the subject or the person that I'm interviewing is, they say to me, I felt like you really cared about, my grief, my pain, my story. I started to not feel things. Like I would interview a mother of a victim. She's pouring her heart out, and I step away and I'm like, oh, I didn't feel anything. And that's when I started to check myself. Okay, what else is there?
Yeah, that's so interesting you say that, and for a couple of reasons. One is that it was the same thing for me. Like, I was traveling the world. I was literally, there were several instances where I was literally living in historic moments or at historic events. I was there for them, and it didn't feel like it didn't feel special anymore. And
anyone else would look at that. Like, I can think of the stories that I've heard you tell, and I just imagine oh my gosh, that's incredible, but I get it.
Yeah.
It totally, okay. Once you've experienced so much, the shine fades.
It fades, and I realized that internally I wasn't feeling the same level of passion, of fire that I once felt. And are you familiar with the hero's journey?
I am, because of you and your podcast, Joe.
Yeah. So that's where I really started embracing this thing. Is for those that aren't familiar with the hero's journey, is the hero starts out in what literature and psychologists and people who study comparative mythology call the ordinary world. It's like when Neo in the Matrix is working in his cubicle right before he's visited by the White Rabbit and ends up going through that whole thing with the Matrix. But anyways, the hero starts out in the ordinary world, gets a call to adventure, ends up going through a series of things, and then eventually after maybe even saying no to the call, that's not something I want to do, in Lord of the Rings, where you see Frodo telling Gandalf no, I don't want to go on this adventure, or Bilbo Baggins, kind of same thing. I think that that's part of the hero's journey, and then the hero eventually crosses this threshold into what they call the special world, which is where the real action of the hero's journey begins. And so I think that what's interesting about your story too is this world that you went into when you first started becoming a reporter became that was very special to you. It was very exciting, that eventually it became ordinary. and then you felt this pull to do something else. Just like, kind of like, for me, everything started feeling ordinary, and then I felt this pull to go do something completely different with my life.
Completely different.
Completely different. So what was your completely different?
So I don't know how you would describe me pre-Army, but I have zero athletic ability.
I could vouch for that.
Yes, none. I love to travel. I'm a wanderer. I'm a restless spirit who, loves adventure, but I also am like a fashion girl who loves sequins and to go to a cocktail bar. I had a very, very nice, privileged life in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then the AP called and they said, hey, we want to start having you cover Fort Bragg. It was 2020. Things had just popped off with Qasem Soleimani, and tensions were rising with Iran. In the 82nd, their IRF was activated. It was New Year's Day. I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah.
And the AP sent me out there. I was in Charlotte. I drove 2 hours. I was really excited about this assignment because it was the first assignment in a while that I had been excited about. Because in my mind, hey, this could be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, to go be the war correspondent.
Exactly,
yeah.
Yes, the vision that I had in my head. So I went out on New Year's Day. I'm out at Green Ramp. That was my first time I had ever been to Green Ramp. And I met a public affairs officer, Colonel Mike Burns, and I said to him in the parking lot, I was like, hey, sir, I've got my bags packed. Like, you let me on that flight with you?
Yeah.
And he kind of he was like, okay, lady, like totally brushed me off, which in retrospect, like that's not how that works. And there was no way I was getting on that flight.
No, not at all.
But I had, the old stories I had read of war correspondents during World War II in Vietnam, like some of my heroes, like Dickie Chappelle, like they would just talk their way wherever. So I tried, didn't work. So I filed that story. And then a few weeks later, I was in the now non-existent AP bureau in Charlotte, in Uptown Charlotte. And I got a call from Colonel Burns, and he was like, hey, it's not the Middle East, but we are going to South America on a training exercise if you want to come capture that. And I had this moment where I took the phone away from my head and I covered the speaker and I was like, yes! Because I was so excited, that's what I was waiting for. And I was like, yes, sir, let me talk to my editors. We'll see. So a week later, I was on my first C-17 with the 82nd, and I was headed for Colombia. I had never been more excited for a story.
Right.
The goal was for me to shoot video, write a text story, and do a photo compilation as well. I went by myself. And it was a totally different environment, to the point where we get to the barracks late at night. We're walking in the barracks, and there was only one other female. She was Sergeant Sanders, Sarah Sanders. She is now Second Lieutenant Sarah Sanders, which is amazing. And the commander spoke up and was like, okay, ladies, we're going to put you in another bay. And she was like, hey, sir, no, I want to be with my men. And I have a constant nagging my entire life to prove myself, which gets me in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, if she's going to do it, I'm going to do it. I was like, okay, I'll stay here. I had no idea what I was getting into at that point. I grew up an only child of a single mother. I never lived with brothers. So at that point, I had only lived with my then husband. And I was about to live with a bunch of infantrymen.
Yeah.
The first night I was terrified. You know what that would look like.
Yeah.
The first night I was terrified. I was I was on the top bunk. I was like, what have I done? But it was the best decision I had made, because they were like, oh shit, she'll stay with us.
Yeah.
Okay. She's this reporter, but maybe we should trust her. And I got a very real, authentic story because of that. And it ultimately changed my life, but you know.
Well, like, let's talk. I really want to talk about that. So you deploy with the 82nd. You stay in this giant bay with a bunch of stinky paratroopers, and then all of a sudden, like, was there like a nagging? Was there like this inner pull? Like what was that where you were like, I'm going to sign up to join the Army.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to OCS.
I didn't realize it was happening in the moment. I was just having this like out of body experience that it was the ultimate for me. I had never experienced that. It's so cliche, but that level of camaraderie.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking about this today, trying to gather my thoughts for the podcast. And I do think I had always wanted to be a part of a team. And I never really felt that.
Right.
And this was the first moment that I was like, this is an amazing feeling, this camaraderie. So I came home, I flew back to Charlotte. The next day, the AP put me on a plane immediately to Des Moines, Iowa, to cover the Iowa caucus, which I never minced words. I hated at that point, still today, I hated covering politics, especially like on the campaign trail. You're on a riser, these politicians on both sides give the same speech. You know when the crowd's gonna cheer at this moment. Like, there's a photo of me in the back of a Bernie Sanders rally in Iowa, like 2 days after I had gotten home from this trip with the 82nd, where it looks like I am absolutely miserable, because I was. Like, I had this peak moment, and then I was going to cover politics. So I got back from that trip, and I walked into a recruiter's office.
Wow. So it was almost like what you didn't realize in the moment when you were in that bay, like you were getting that call to adventure of your hero's journey. And then, like, how long after the Bernie Sanders rally was it before you, like was it days, was it weeks before you walked in that recruiter?
It was days after I got home from Iowa.
So you're like a first time hero call answer, like hero's journey.
I get, but
answer the
I
call.
didn't. Here's the thing, and there were a lot of things in retrospect I should have thought about.
Right.
We can talk about that in a minute. I didn't think. I just did it, and that's I do that a lot.
Yeah,
like I
do
just went
too.
for it. I also was in like a nice suit, and I walked in, and the recruiter was like, "What?
Yeah.
Who is this?" And kind of blew me off. And said, oh, well, OCS is really hard to get into, you're probably not gonna be able to. So I called a friend of mine who, he's a retired Green Beret. I had done some stories with him, and he was like, let me set you up with the right recruiter.
Awesome.
Got the right recruiter. He was like, no, we'll get you into OCS, it'll be fine. So suddenly, I went through the interview process, the board, got cleared, and all of a sudden the non-athlete has to, actually go for a run.
Yeah. So you go through this, and eventually, obviously, you make it to OCS, and then you.
But remember, basic training first.
Right. Sorry, basic training. Yeah. So you had to go through that, and when you were at basic training, were you like, what?
Yeah, I was actually reading my journal. I pulled it out last night from basic, and this point, 4 years ago, I was absolutely terrified. Like, I would wake up every single morning like, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah.
Like, we had just moved into this beautiful new house, and overnight that was gone. And listen, I realize that there are going to be people listening to this who will say, okay, well, the basic training of today is not like it was. I know that. But I also was 31 with a very comfortable life. So it was a shock to the system, which is probably why it was so life-changing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, is that again, going back to this theme of the hero's journey, which I obsess about, everybody who goes through it, like, your immersion into the special world, or the place that's really going to test you and grow you, is going to be different. For me, I remember it was 6 months, it was January 2024, I have made the decision that I'm going to retire. I'm going to get out. I'm going to become a writer. And it hit me in that moment that I was 6 months away. I had no idea what the hell I was going to do. Like, it's very easy. Well, it's not very easy, but to be like, hey, I'm getting out, you know, and like, that's the thing is like,
it's easy to say something.
Yeah. Like, I left the comfort of a steady paycheck. I know the ins and outs of the military.
That you had known your entire adult life.
Right, yeah. And I know when the crowd's gonna cheer,
Sure.
you know? And so I think that like, that moment for me was like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? And then like that continued to like, has continued really to creep up, you know, since leaving the Army is like, wow, like this is scary. And, you know, for people listening, you know, again, your scary moment is sitting in a bay in basic training, you know, like going through that. Mm-hmm. Mine is sitting in the quiet moments of my house when I'm no longer in uniform and I'm like, holy crap, like what
did
am I
I make the right decision?
Right, yeah, like exactly.
Because so much is at stake.
Right, yeah. So much is at stake. So for you, obviously you made it through basic training. Mm-hmm. Obviously you made it through OCS. But like what happened to Sarah Blake Morgan, the AP reporter, the Charlotte newswoman? Like what happened to her?
I don't recognize her. She is non-existent.
But has that been a struggle?
Absolutely. I'm going back to my journal real quick. I wrote about, I look back on this and I was actually really critical of myself at the time. I will bring it up again, not an athlete. So like, you know, I talk about how I struggled to climb the rope or I didn't do so great at the obstacle course and how like I was like beating myself up in this journal. But I wrote this on Sunday, May 30th, 2021. So I was about 10-ish days away from basic training graduation. And I said, I remembered something today, my original why. I'd forgotten, not sure how. I remembered thinking how proud I'll be when I graduate. Like maybe for the first time I'll feel like I can do anything. I've definitely lost sight of that throughout this process. In the moment it seems easy, a lot of it is, but what I'm doing isn't average. I can't let those lies seep into my head. It's extraordinary, it's life-changing, it's pulling me out of mediocrity, and exactly that was always the goal, right?
Right.
And that was it. Like, the whole point, the Charlotte Observer did an article before I left for basic, and I said in that article, like, I had this pivot point where I had to choose to be just the same and go on this path of easy, or pivot and do something completely crazy to upend the status quo. And that's what this did. And I didn't see it in the moment, but it completely upended everything about my life. And letting go of that past person, the identity, reporter Sarah Blake, has been a journey.
Yeah, I really want to talk about that, because this is like, and this is the impetus for this car ride, is like you and I were texting a couple weeks ago about it, and I was like, man, like I wonder like what, you know, other people go through when they kill an identity to adopt something new. And I remember I actually texted a guy, an NFL player who had won 2 Super Bowls, and he was a kicker, and I asked him, I said, like, did you struggle? And he said no, because he always knew he was 2 bad kicks away from getting fired and kicked out of the NFL. And so he made it a point never to let that become his identity. And so I've been thinking about that a lot. And he said there's a lot of NFL players who struggle ever since leaving the NFL with doing something else because they didn't want to let go of that professional football player persona. And so I was thinking about, like, even with me, you know, I've been wearing a uniform since I was 18 years old, because I went to the University of North Georgia and was in the Corps of Cadets there. And I've been getting up for PT every morning since I was 18 years old. And so there wasn't really an option for me to be like, well, I'm not going to identify as an Army officer. And so there were times in my career where I was able to, it was almost like killing pieces of that identity and pulling away from it to discover who I was. But it's definitely not been an easy process. And even out of uniform now, like, I think I got a leg up, but I've talked to so many people who struggled with it. So like, what is it? That's a really long way for me to ask this next question. But like, what does that struggle look like for you?
It's in process.
Do you need tissues?
No, I don't
Okay,
need
I'm just asking.
No, but it's a process that I didn't expect
Right.
because I voluntarily walked away, and I still struggle with saying walked or I was a reporter,
Right.
because I haven't let go of that. And that's in flux. Like, I'm still very unsure about my path forward and what storytelling and journalism looks like. But I don't think I realized like how much I wasn't just Sarah Blake. I was Sarah Blake, the reporter.
Right.
And getting into the Army, I wanted to let everybody know that. But like, I felt like I had to make that known so I would have a seat at the table. Quite frankly, it got me a seat at the table.
Right.
Like, that was almost the only interesting thing about me, and that was my crutch for so long. And losing that, trying to figure out who I am without that identity, is in flux.
I'd like to introduce you to our newest partner, Roger Bank, a modern digital military bank built by military members for military members. Whether you're stationed stateside or overseas, Roger is designed to meet the unique needs of our men and women in uniform. I recently opened an account myself, and the process was incredibly smooth. It took less than 10 minutes from start to finish. Now, here's why I'm excited to partner with Roger. They offer high-yield checking and savings accounts, zero account fees, early payday, and automatic savings with Roundup Match. Their military-ready direct deposit form is even auto-populated and signed by the CEO, saving you time and hassle. Plus, you get free global ATM access, real person customer support, and they even offer accounts for service members as young as 17. Funds are FDIC insured through Citizens Bank of Edmond, so you can bank with confidence and peace of mind. Visit roger.bank to learn more. That's ROGER.bank. I love that you said that like that was your seat at the table. Like, that is the most interesting thing about me, because yeah, like, how many times have I been at a party with people who maybe weren't in the military and they asked me what I did, and then that's like a 30, 40 minute, conversation. And I think that's like, it's
like,
all,
what do people do that, like, they're just themselves?
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa,
exactly.
Like that's a foreign concept to us.
Who is that? Yeah, and even now, like, if I'm being honest, like, I went through this hero's journey. I, dug down to who I was and like, what is my gift? And I literally, in the hero's journey, in stories, the hero overcomes some sort of villain who stands in the way between the hero and his or her object. It's some nefarious bad guy. And I think that where that comes from is in our own internal hero's journeys. It's us killing that persona. It's me killing, Joe Byerly, the Army officer. It's you killing Sarah Blake Morgan, the reporter.
So we're our own bad guys?
Yes, yes, we are. We are our own bad guys because, and this is, here's another question for you. As I was getting close to making this decision of getting out of the Army to go pursue this writing thing, which again, I believe is my gift, all of a sudden, like, these opportunities started like coming at me, right? Like, calling me back into the ordinary world. And there was this voice in the back of my head that's like, dude, what are you doing? You could stay in the Army. You've got this down. You could keep getting promoted.
Because it's easy and comfortable.
Yes, exactly.
And what you know.
Yeah. And so I think that, like, you literally have to go through a process. And I've never, like, I'm sure this is a thing, but I didn't hear it until I talked to you. as we've talked through this, is ego death. Like, you have to kill the persona, you have to kill the ego in order to like dig down and figure out, who am I without the titles, without the corner office, without the whatever behind my name?
And I don't know, is that a question? Because yes, all of that. It was a recent, I don't know, low point. I'm complaining to my best friend, and she sent an article to me, and she was like, I think you're experiencing ego death. And I had never heard of that before. But it made perfect sense, because it is always, as we were saying, the leading point that I bring up. Oh, what do you do? I'm a journalist. Oh, wow, that's really interesting. But what if I didn't have that to say?
Yeah.
Who am I? So, yeah, shedding that. I'm a what? Okay, I'm just a human being that cares about what? What is my why? Trying to figure out my passions, my why, what is going to make me happy ultimately in this life. Because there was a reason that I wanted more and stepped away from journalism. So I'm still working at finding out that reason.
What is that like? Have you discovered something within yourself? Like, again, I'm going with just me, is like, I told you, like, writing is my gift. Creativity is my gift. Sitting down and asking people questions so they can share their knowledge with an audience, that is something I love doing. It's my passion. And I think that, like, but I had to, like, get away from the Army officer to really understand and to go with this. Like, what have you discovered in this process of saying that you're no longer a reporter? Or
well,
am I allowed?
We're not there yet,
okay,
Joe.
My bad.
Maybe this will be the breakthrough moment for me. So there's never been something else in my head that, like, oh, if I wasn't a reporter, I'd do this. Like, that was all I ever wanted. I wanted it on a grander scale. It didn't work out. I'll mention that, like, I interviewed at the big networks. I interviewed at CBS, CNN. Those doors were shut, but there was a reason. Now, a year later, I see that reason.
Yeah.
So pivoting totally was something in my head. Like, do I need to take the foreign service exam and join the State Department? Like, that'll get my restless spirit going, or like my wanderlust, that'll check the box. But it doesn't have to be something that's totally foreign to you. It can be. I think mine was the Army, but the Army is ultimately, right now, like, I'm still storytelling in the Army, and that's what I've discovered is I can still make impact and tell people stories and use my gifts. I just am doing it in a different way. And I'm working through those ways right now, and whether that's something that, like, I'm just exploring outside of my full-time job, or that's something that I pursue full-time ultimately. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I am learning that it doesn't have to look how I've always had it. So I thought it was that big network, with a mic flag in, with the lights and it doesn't have to look like that. And we all know that the news landscape especially has changed so much that this is a conversation that will be very different in 5 to 10 years. Yeah. I can tell stories elsewhere, and it can potentially make the same, if not greater, impact.
Yeah, you said I think that's like an important point too, is that you said you've discovered through Army, like, this passion for storytelling.
In a different way.
In a different way. And it can be outside of Sarah Blake Morgan, the reporter. And I think like that's an important thing. And that's what happened with me is 2015. I've told a story a couple times on the podcast, but then Colonel Steve Marks had me sit down, write out my values, write down my why statement, and really, like, dig into reflecting on purpose. And in that moment, my purpose, which has become one of the taglines to the podcast, to the blog, which is to help others lead with the best version of themselves. And when I came up with that, like that's what fills me up. I recognized that like I didn't need the Army to do that, you know? And even when I was in the Army, there were jobs that I could connect that purpose to, of helping others lead with the best version of themselves. Like if I was traveling around with General Miller, helping him communicate, either to senior defense officials or throughout the entire forces stationed in Afghanistan, I was helping him lead with the best version of himself. And so I'm like, for you, right? Like you're helping your organization tell stories now. And like in that discovery, like you're doing stuff in your free time too, that's telling stories, but it doesn't feel like work, does it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So I'll go to one of my heroes and mentors who, if you follow me on social media, you know I talk about her constantly, and she's been on this podcast.
Yeah.
Command Sergeant Major Joanne Nauman. I had a low point, I would say, in December, where I was really struggling to figure out, okay, what is next? I'm currently active duty. I'm a reservist on active duty, but this is not like, I don't plan to stay there forever. So what am I going to do next? This is the first time that I can say in my life that I don't have the next step forward in my head. Like I always said I was going to go to this market, then I was, gonna go be based in London and then Syria and blah, 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 blah. Like that was in my head. But now I don't know what's next.
Right.
This is the first time, which is great for me. I hate it, but good for me, both personally and professionally, that I have slowed down and I'm not running. Not just not more figuratively, like I'm not running from, my problems, chaos. Like I am just sitting and letting life happen, which is
sucks.
good. It sucks. Man.
It's like, I'm with you. It's really good for you.
But this is the first time in my life I've ever done it.
Yeah.
And probably you too.
Same. It sucks.
Yeah, that's why we're friends. We're going through a very similar, but different, but very similar point in life.
Yeah.
So I'm in CSM Nauman's office, and I was talking about how, and I know you talk about comparison a lot, and I've always compared myself to others in the news business. So when I see a new correspondent on CNN, I will instantly look for their LinkedIn, look at what year they graduated college. Oh my God, she's younger than me. How did she get there? What did I do wrong? That is constant in my head, which is not great.
That's not good at all. I can't believe you shared that.
Yeah, well, I'm just being
Yeah.
honest. But it's always, even today I do that.
Yeah.
So I was talking to her about how like nobody's, like this path, like nobody's done this before. Like I don't know how to follow. You have seen some soldiers who get out of the Army and then they become journalists, but I don't know how to merge these two worlds that I also have to keep very separate.
Yeah.
And she was like, you are you? Why are you trying to follow someone else's path?
Yeah.
She said, you're following a path right now. You need to get off the path and wander into the woods. And I'm going to admit this right now, and I didn't want to share this with the world because I never thought this would happen, but I start crying in the CSM of USASOC's office.
Yeah.
And she's saying, wander into the woods, make your own path. And if anybody can say that, it's someone who's a trailblazer like her. She said, the branches are going to slap you in the face on the way, and you're going to get beat up, but just take the first step. You have no idea where you're going, but just go. So that's what I'm trying to do. I don't even remember what your question was, Joe.
I don't either. I think we were just talking about like how hard it is, and I think that advice is really important too, because just hearing you talk is that, when we start out, we're 21, 22, whatever, for most of us, like the path is set. Like I'm hearing you talk about like what like number network you're going to, right? It's a foreign language to me, but it's like a second language to you. For me, it was the ranks, the positions, the key developmental timeline that I had to stay on for a 20-year career to be quote unquote successful, right? But once you get to this place in your life, I think of ego death, and going back to the hero's journey again, in the Grail stories, I think it was Sir Gawain, as the knights are about to go on their quest, he comes up with the idea. He says, each of us has to enter the forest where it's darkest, where there is no path, because if there is a path, it's not the path you're supposed to be on to go find the Grail. And so I think that advice from Sergeant Major Nauman is so important. And it's very, my wife shared a podcast with me from Brene Brown that she recorded a long time ago called FFTs, Fucking First Times. And it is, that's what it is for you as you're, figuring this stuff out, and it's super scary. And I think there's a part of us that wants to run back to our old lives. Me, not as much, because, I'm happy, but I'm still scared. I don't want to go back, but I also don't want to sit here in this, part of the forest. I want to keep going forward. And it's super uncomfortable, but I think that's kind of the price of growth, and discovery.
1,000,000%. I have had multiple times over the last 6 months, as life has been a little slower, where I've reached out to my agent and I'm like, hey, why don't we get my tape back together and we can start sending it back out. I can record some new stuff. WRAL, they've got and I've sworn off local news. I've said multiple times to my agent out loud, I'm not going back to local news. I'm calling him hey, WRAL in Raleigh, I would love to go work for them. I don't know why, because I don't want that. I turn on the 6 o'clock news and I don't want that life anymore. And listen, be kind to your local news reporters, because that's a miserable existence. Just so, a look behind the curtain. It's tough out there. And you're schlepping around to every sad story. And I don't want that anymore. But it was easy. It's the easy thing. And when I, quite frankly, don't feel like I have a platform anymore or heard, I'm my default is, I'm gonna go back on, on TV and people will care. When, no, that's not how that's not my why. That's not going to make an impact. So about a month and a half ago, we had a 4-day, and I was like, you know what? I keep seeing on social media that Western North Carolina is still hurting. This was around the time of the LA fires, and there was frustration that, as Americans do, they shift their focus from one disaster to the next. And Western North Carolina is still catastrophic levels of devastation, and yet there's no, focus on that suffering anymore. So it was a Friday morning. I got in the car, drove out to Asheville. I had nothing set up, and I was nervous because it was the first time that I had walked into a storytelling moment where I wasn't able to walk up to somebody's door and knock on it cold and be like, hey, I'm Sarah Blake Morgan from the Associated Press, from WBTV. I was just, hey, I'm Sarah Blake. I'm here. I'm wanting to tell some stories and shine a spotlight back on what's going on here. To be quite frank, I've covered my fair share of disasters after 12 years in news, and it looked like it had happened yesterday, not at that time 4 months ago. So I thought people were going to care, and be like, who are you? Why would I talk to you? They don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
They just wanted to be heard. And so I, spent a couple of days there. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. Put together a video that actually, it got some shares, and ultimately, which is the why, it got some people help. And now that's turning into a podcast, and I'm slowly figuring out my why there. I can still do this and I keep going back to impact, but that's always at the heart of what I hope to be and do is, can I affect and make impact on people?
And I think that's my belief on the hero's journey is
the other thing is that like once the hero signs up to go on this quest, like the theory goes that magical aid, like people show up, people come out of the woodwork, things happen to help you on your way. Like the universe gets on your side and things start happening. So like now you have this podcast, The Forgotten, where you're not Sarah Blake Morgan, the reporter, you're just Sarah Blake, telling people stories that the traditional media and the rest of the world had forgotten.
And that's the goal, and we're very transparent, and Joe actually helped me finesse some of the wording, but I start off the podcast saying, like, I was part of the problem.
Right.
We are very ADD in America. One thing happens, then we forget and move on to the next. I was part of that issue for 12 years, so let's go back and focus on some of these issues that are still enduring, because as we say, like, I think you wrote the line, just because the cameras go away doesn't mean the problem stops.
Yeah, I think you did, but okay.
Okay, whatever. Fine, I'll take credit for it. But I do want to go back to, like, there are a lot of bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Like, I would say, as I'm still figuring this out, I have more moments than I don't of, okay, what am I doing? What's next? Am I doing enough? That's a huge one.
Yes.
I am not doing enough. I'm lazy. I'm sitting still. I don't know. Like, I'm almost paralyzed because I don't know what step to take next.
Yeah, I can really appreciate that. For me, going back to the universe getting on your side and things happening. Like I had this moment of fear. Like okay, I'm gonna be a writer, but what does that mean? And this guy that like I was secretly competing with in my mind, being like, I can do this, I can do that, whatever. That was bullshit.
See, comparison.
Yeah, it's not good. But in January, Ryan Holiday reaches out and is like, "What are you doing when you get out? Why don't you come, work with me, help me write books?" And I was like, this is awesome. So I ended up jumping on that, and I remember like the first month writing with him. I wrote this like amazing line to this book that's coming out, and I was like, this is genius. And all of a sudden, like I watched him reject the suggestion, and I was like, oh man, maybe this isn't the thing. Like, it was scary because like it wasn't. There's bumps in the road, and like now months later, like we're shucking and jiving on this next book, and like. It's crazy. So,
but that's growth.
It's growth, yes.
Because at that moment, that was the line. It was artistic genius. But now, in retrospect, like him rejecting that put a fire under you.
Yeah, I was learning. I was like, okay,
Sure.
I got to do this, and so I think that like, part of this journey of discovery is you have to have the space to slow down, right? Like you talk about.
And we hate it.
It sucks, 100%. But you have to.
My mother this morning sent me pictures of lemurs in Madagascar. Like, she is in Madagascar and I am in North Carolina, and it's driving me insane.
Yeah.
But it's necessary.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want to go do like run. But in reality, and I think it's a line that Stephen Pressfield wrote, he said, like, the big events happen in movies, not in the action-filled sequences, but in the quiet, pensive beats when the lead actor is having a moment of thought, having a moment of realization that they need to do something different, they need to do something new. And so I think, like, I get this, I keep coming back to it, Sarah, like, this idea of the hero's journey. Like, both you and I are both in this special world right now. We're figuring stuff out. Like, things are coming in your world because you're in the part where the forest is darkest. Things are happening in my world. It's not comfortable, but we're moving forward with it. And I think it's important for anybody to know, like, it may not be telling stories. It may not be writing. It could be high school coach. It could be, my wife went from being a elementary school teacher to a customer relations manager at a elite communications firm. Like it could be something, and she's in love with that, and so I think that it's, like for whoever's listening to this and is finding themselves in a position, whether it's all the way back to where you felt bored at the Bernie Sanders rally, or I'm traveling the world and I'm like, this is kind of the same old, or they're in that moment where they're like scared, like you were in basic training.
A lot of fear.
Yeah. Or
and that's okay.
You crying in Sergeant Major Nauman's office, me crying.
Thank you for bringing that up again.
Yeah, I just want to say it. Or me like freaking out in the quietness of my own day now by myself at my house, where I'm like, what am I doing? I think that one of the key messages of this is that you have to kill that ego. You have to have the quiet in order to discover that gift that's going to be the thing that propels you into the next chapter, which is the third act of the hero's journey, where the hero returns with the gift and saves the kingdom.
So when does that happen?
I don't know. I have no
Glennon
idea.
Doyle, so I had a copy of one of her books, and I took it to basic training, and a friend of mine who was an anchor, and talk about that was her identity and left it all behind, Molly Grantham in Charlotte. She had a highlighted copy that she gave me. I took it to basic. Of course, the drill sergeants took it away. Oh, yeah. So I was like writing down in my journal, and actually it's this one. And I wrote down everything that I could remember from the book. And it really, like, her words got me through it. One of them, feel it all. Like, in those quiet, still, waiting moments, we try to run and avoid our feelings. Let it happen. Everything I need to become the person I'm meant to be is inside me now.
Yes.
So do we know when we're going to become the people we're meant to be? No. But I guess I see it more now than I ever have before, even though the end goal is still fuzzy. What I look like at the end is totally fuzzy, but also the person who I was is unrecognizable.
Yeah, and I want to point out too that like the stuff you're doing for the forgotten, like you're doing it in your free time. Like you're doing it at night, you're doing it on the weekends, you're working on it at my house.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out the microphone, so I just voiced on his podcast, and him and his wife just listened. And I was like, is that okay, guys?
Yeah, but like you're doing it and it's like bringing you joy, right? Like it
is 100% bringing me joy. And purpose. Like we get back to purpose, and we can have that outside of our 9 to 5, whatever that is. And that's something that I think should be a takeaway here is if we have an identity, if we have an ego wrapped up in our work, who we are, either the military or elsewhere career-wise, we can also start to explore other things that make us happy. So I don't know if like doing a podcast is ever going to be my full time, but I at least stepped into the woods to try to figure out what else brought me happiness outside of work.
Yeah,
because my job was my existence.
Right, but like I think that's the thing is like through action you're discovering, right? Like
that's it.
Like before,
but I was paralyzed for a while.
Right. But like before you had this plan, you had this roadmap where you were constantly focused 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, right? I had a roadmap where I was focused 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. And now we're in this place where like we're doing the thing, like we're doing the verb, we're doing the action now. And through that, we're discovering things about ourselves. And it's kind of like, it's like the action itself is leading you to the next step instead of you just going that way, like you're forcing it.
And
previously.
You don't know what's going to come next, but it's going to come your way. I like that through action, you find discovery.
Ooh, I need to write that down.
Yeah, did you get that from somewhere?
I'm sure I did. I read a bunch of stuff. It's
good though.
It'll hit me through.
Wander into the woods, move forward.
Yeah.
Movement is better than stagnancy.
Well, Sarah, this was, what do you think?
I thought this was great. We decided we would have this conversation, see where it goes. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like this, because I'm the one usually asking questions, let's be honest. But I think this is great, especially because we are in a very similar phase in life, and I feel like a lot of your listeners probably are too.
Yeah, I think it turned out great. It was a good discussion. Driving allowed me to focus on the road and not think about what we're actually doing. But yeah, I think this was a good discussion too, and I hope whoever's listening, this, dislodges something that's kind of stuck right now, and helps somebody go ahead and like take that next step and let the proverbial branch hit him in the face. Yeah. So Sarah, thank you so much for your time today. This was awesome. Maybe we'll do it again.
You know what? Let's do it.
But you'll pay for gas next time.
No promises. Hey, if my podcast takes off, you never know.
Yeah, exactly. I may be a guest on yours. All right. Well, have a great. I guess I have to take you home now.
Yes.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Yes. Or you could drop me off. Remember, I've got to. If it ain't raining, it ain't training. What is it?
What?
Like Couldn't we cut that? I need a better outro. That was terrible.
Yeah, we'll cut it.
Okay,
or we'll just leave it in
back
here if people
to
are still listening to the episode.
Thanks. This was great.
Thank you again for listening to another episode of From the Green Notebook podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us gain visibility and the opportunity to help more people on their leadership journey. Also, make sure you check out our website at www.fromthegreennotebook.com. There, you can listen to past episodes, read leadership articles written by military leaders from around the world. You can sign up for our monthly reading list email where you can learn about new books that are coming out, and our Sunday reflection email that comes out every Sunday morning. Is really short. It's a 2-minute read, but I guarantee you it's going to start your week off on the right foot. Finally, make sure you follow us on Twitter at FTGN Notebook, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for From the Green Notebook. Again, thank you so much for coming on this journey with us. I am humbled by the opportunity to learn these lessons alongside you. So please join us next week for another episode of From the Green Notebook, where we're going to help you lead with the best version of yourself.
I came from the mud. There's